Hello and welcome to a super episode of On Screen. I'm your host Dylan Wright, and I'm here to take you on a journey through film and television. So this week I decided I was going to cover something that I've covered partially in the past, but now that a new season of this anthology of shows has come out and there's more shows out, I thought I would talk about the Marvel Netflix series. Namely Daredevil, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, Punisher, and The Defenders. So these are some really cool shows. Unfortunately, I don't think they're kind of connected with the main Marvel Cinematic Universe. They reference them, they definitely talk about them a little bit, but they're not directly crossing over with them, which I think is a really big disappointment because a lot of the actors that appear in these Marvel Netflix shows are really, really good, and their character work and a lot of their acting abilities really stand up, and I think that they would really work out within the Marvel Cinematic Universe as like the street type superheroes. But it all started with Daredevil. This was a show that I was kind of dreading when I heard that it was coming out for Netflix. You think about the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie that came out in the early 2000s, and you just cringe about how terrible that movie was and how terribly acted Daredevil was and just how gritty and dark it was. I mean, when you have Evanescence bring me to life in your movie, you know that you're a pretty emo movie. So I was dreading Daredevil when it came out, but when the first season dropped on Netflix, I remember staying up 1 o'clock, I think it dropped where I was at in the morning, and I watched like the first 3 episodes and I was hooked. The second episode, there's this really amazing one-take fight scene where it's just a brutal, drag-out, knock-down battle between Daredevil and some thugs, and it was some of the best fight choreography I've ever seen. And it's a really good show that features a lot of awesome actors. Charlie Cox as Daredevil himself, Matt Murdock. He really brings a human side to Daredevil that Ben Affleck failed to bring in the original Daredevil movie. And I think his interactions with Karen Page and Foggy Nelson are really down to earth, and they feel real. They feel like real characters and the real people. And I love Foggy and Matt's relationship. Avocados at law. That's hilarious, and it's definitely something that would happen between friends. The first season of Daredevil is great. The second season, I think, falters towards the halfway point because the first half you're focusing on Daredevil going up against the Punisher, played by Jon Bernthal. And it's really solid. There's a lot of really nice dichotomy of their two personalities and how they handle tackling crime and how different yet similar they are. And it really works. And then the second half of the season is dedicated to working with Elektra, who is Daredevil's former lover, coming back to New York City. And it kind of falls flat as compared to the first half of the season. The chemistry between Elektra and Matt Murdock, it's pretty good, but in some cases it's not what it could be. I think that the show was a little disserviced by having somewhat of a split narrative in terms of that season, especially when you had a strong villain like the Kingpin, played by Vincent D'Onofrio, in the first season. And this season you kind of have a couple of different villains, a lot of hands in the pots, and it doesn't really work out as well as it could have. My favorite show, though, of this whole anthology of shows is Jessica Jones. I think that Krysten Ritter plays this character, this streetwise detective who is a really raging alcoholic that has super strength. She plays this character so well. I first saw Krysten Ritter in Breaking Bad, and she played Jesse's girlfriend, and she was really good in it. And I was like, yeah, I hope I see more of this girl because she's really, really amazing. And she was in Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23 with one of my favorite actors of all time, James Van Der Beek, because I love Dawson's Creek, and I'm not ashamed of that. And then she's in Jessica Jones, and she does an amazing job. There's a lot of really deep character study within Jessica Jones especially. It plays out as almost like a detective story where you have this hard-boiled detective who is on the case and has to battle some personal demons. And boy, when I talk about personal demons on Jessica Jones, there's one that's pretty personified by the name of Kilgrave, played by David Tennant, who was the 10th Doctor in Doctor Who. And let me tell you, that is one of the creepiest villains I've ever seen on screen. David Tennant really gets under your skin with his performance, and I think that the performances from Krysten Ritter and David Tennant are just some of the best in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Marvel Netflix universe, because it shows these two people that have a history. and you could feel that history whenever they're locking eyes with each other or around each other, because they both have this charisma to them, whereas Kristen Ritter, even though she's a pretty crappy person, she has this likability that you can't help but smile whenever she's on screen or whenever she's beating the crap out of somebody. And David Tennant has this mesmerizing quality to him that makes you believe that this is a man that can control people's actions with a sentence. And it has some really interesting comments on relationships and controlling people in relationships. And it's really, really interesting. And it's definitely some of the best written Marvel I've seen. After Jessica Jones, Luke Cage came out, and that's a really cool story as well. Michael Coulter does a really good job as Luke Cage. He doesn't do well with the really deep acting, but when he has to be like the stoic hero, he does a really amazing job and can really pull off. You would think that this guy's bulletproof. He looks like an intimidating man, and whenever somebody punches him and he just rolls his eyes, you feel that. He does a really good job. And I think Luke Cage has one of my favorite villains as well, with Cottonmouth, played by Mahershala Ali. And of course, he was in Moonlight and was really amazing in that. And he plays a really charismatic villain in this show. And it's a really different take on New York, because we've had Hell's Kitchen with Daredevil, and we've had kind of mainstream New York with Jessica Jones, and this New York is Harlem. And it's really cool seeing all these different boroughs represented throughout these different shows. And it's really, if you combine the shows and you look at them from afar, it's almost like a character study of New York City. And that's especially relevant in The Defenders, which combines all 4 shows that came out before it. And I didn't get to the 4th show because Iron Fist is not great. It falls flat. It doesn't really work in anything that it sets out to do. There's some interesting characters in it. Some of the acting's okay, but it's really, really forgettable. It's not great. I wouldn't recommend watching Iron Fist, except that when you watch The Defenders, which is the cool crossover show, Iron Fist is pretty narratively important to it, which is kind of stupid. Although in The Defenders, it has the character of Danny Rand, who is Iron Fist, getting the crap kicked out of him quite a bit, which is really fun because he's just a rich white boy that is entitled and does nothing and stupid. It's not a great show. The other 3 shows are great. That one's not. The Defenders is a really cool show too. I think that it combines each character really well, and it gives each of the stars of their own show a time to shine. It allows you to come in as a fan of one show and become a fan of one of the others. Maybe you only like Jessica Jones, and you come out of The Defenders liking Daredevil. And maybe you like Luke Cage, and you come out of The Defenders thinking that Iron Fist is still a whiny piece of trash. It does its job well. I think it doesn't service the secondary characters of the show well enough. I think that Misty Knight from Luke Cage, who's a really awesome character, Claire Temple from all of the shows actually, is a really cool character. Those 2 characters definitely have the most in terms of the secondary characters. But people like Trish Walker, Malcolm from Jessica Jones, Foggy, Karen from Daredevil, they aren't serviced well enough in this story. I think that they're kind of put on the sideline and are put on the bench a little bit, and they could have been made into the story a little more. And I think a lot of that is because the episodes there's only 8 of them in The Defenders, so it's less time to talk about all the different other side plots from the other shows and stuff like that. And it does give some time to Sigourney Weaver as the villain of the piece, and she does a really good job. Sigourney Weaver's a great actress, and I think that she is a really cool big bad for The Defenders. I think it's lesser than the sum of its parts, the show. It does some things really cool, but it isn't quite what you want from these shows coming together. It doesn't quite have the impact that like the Avengers had. It kind of peters out in terms of the stakes. I feel like the stakes are a little higher in the other shows, even though they're more personal journeys. But I like The Defenders. It's a good show. And real quick, talking about The Punisher, which is like a Daredevil spinoff, it does a good job. It mixes its metaphors a little bit. I think John Bernthal is probably the best Punisher, but it's good. It's a good watch. It's definitely better than Iron Fist. If I had to rank the shows in order of greatness, I would go Jessica Jones, Daredevil, Luke Cage in a really close second place with Daredevil. The Defenders, Punisher, and Iron Fist really, really low. Check out the shows if you haven't. If you've just watched the Marvel movies, the Marvel Netflix shows are really definitely worth checking out. Even if they're not directly connected with the big screen movies, Infinity War or anything like that. It's a really cool look at the ground heroes, the heroes that aren't battling the cosmic entities or anything like that. These are the heroes that are fighting the street crime. And I think it's definitely worth a watch if you haven't checked them out. So that's going to be it for this week's episode of On Screen. If you have any future suggestions for topics, I would love to cover anything that you'd like me to hear. And as always, until next time, take care.